Greetings, I'm Rosalind Parks, and thank you for tuning into this edition of National Network View News. In today's broadcast, Brother Brian E. Muhammad explains the role of economic freedom in the teachings of civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Afterward, Dr. Akili Muhammad joins us to talk on boosting your immune system during the pandemic. Civil rights leader Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was involved in many marches and demonstrations, including the Montgomery bus boycott, the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, and the Memphis sanitation workers' strike. Joining us to discuss this is NNV Global View contributor Brian E. Muhammad, FCN staff writer. Greetings, sir.
Greetings, Sister Rosalind.
How are you?
I'm well. I'm doing good today. Thank you.
Good. Brother Brian, in 1963, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech was coined, "I have a dream." But later, Dr. King said, "I fear that I have integrated my people into a burning house." Did Dr. King come to regret his effort at integration?
I don't want to describe it as he came to regret. I think Dr. King has always knew the reality of America, always knew the reality. He was not, even if we go back and listen to his 1963 speech, it was more about a check that has yet to be honored. And so he was always talking about economic development. I believe he understood more than what I think the history books have tried to change his legacy into, which is, nothing more than a dreamer. But I don't think he grew to regret. I think he grew to the point that he had to deal with the reality head on, that this was economic injustice, and certain dots had to be tied in terms of the suffering of Black people in America and, the suffering masses of people throughout the world. I think he came to a time in his career where he had to begin to speak on that rather than, just deal with the civil rights or the local domestic issues of America.
Now, did the Honorable Elijah Muhammad consider the offer of integration to be hypocritical and deceptive at the time?
Well, at the time and now, yeah, because, when we talk about integration is when you have two equals making a decision for integration, you know. But when you are in a situation where the white is not equal, or Blacks are not equal with the white reality, integration is a hypocritical trick, because it would not have brought about freedom, justice, and equality. It at most it would have been another form of a lopsided relationship, which it has proven to be.
Real purpose for the slave master's children to offer integration?
So it really, it was a pacifier. It was a pacifier. They knew that the equality was not there. After slavery, and I would say during what they call Reconstruction time of this country, where Black people built over 60 townships in this country, we had independent economic development, because we could not, because of Jim Crow and discrimination, we could not go and really do business with the Caucasian community. We couldn't sit in their restaurants. We couldn't, all these so-called public accommodation kind of things. So we had to do that for ourselves. Now, if they want to say that integration, was not something that did a damaging effect economically to Black people, I think that they need their heads examined, because history had proved when integration opened, or when we were open now to go to white restaurants and do the things and quote unquote mingle as though we arrived somewhere, we stopped supporting ours. And now look at where we're at today.
Right. Now, one thing that we've seen quite a few pictures of, and they'll start circulating social media again here shortly, is a picture of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King speaking with the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. How did Dr. King's conversation with the most honorable Elijah Muhammad influence his evolutionary transformation?
Well, again, I think that we have to look at Dr. King in a fuller picture. I think that, again, if we continue the narrative that we're taught in school, that this was this dreamer, he was not a revolutionary, Dr. King was on an evolutionary development, a trajectory moving forward, like other leaders in the past. There was a leader at the turn of the century, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, who for all intents and purposes, was an integrationist. But later in life, he evolved and he became a staunch internationalist, Pan-Africanist. You see? So, but these things don't happen in a vacuum. These things happen when you begin to deal with the realization of power and what makes the equations of power in the society and in the world. And so I would say that I don't know the influence of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad on the evolutionary development of Dr. King per se. I would say when they met in 1967, I think it was early 1968, whenever the meeting took place that they had, Dr. King was already on this trajectory and he was catching hell. All of the civil rights leaders, these so-called Negro, really these misleaders, rejected him. He couldn't speak in many of the churches because he stopped, he began to expand the conversation from, again, civil rights into a realm of human rights and America's dastardly policy across the world. He began to condemn Vietnam and the war in Vietnam. And to do that, it means he went up against the military industrial complex, which is really the background of war, the big money-making machine. So his peers began to reject him because many of them was banking on not a paycheck for the masses of our people, suffering Black people. They were looking for the lobbying power for their own personal wallets, and organizations. And so the NAACP had at that time Roy Wilkins, old handkerchief head Roy Wilkins, who said, I'm an Uncle Tom and I'm proud to be. He said this on national TV in the 1960s. He rejected him. All of these rejected him because they were looking at the stance he was taking, how it would interfere with their personal pockets and the hell with the people. But I would say this to answer your question. I think that Dr. King was already on a trajectory, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad only added to that. I'm sure when they met, nobody really knows the outcome because Dr. King didn't live long enough after that meeting for us to really gauge an outcome. But we know from the stances that he took, and let me just say one more, I want to add one thing to Dr. King's trajectory. 1956, the country of Ghana became independent. Dr. King was at the inauguration of its first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. He was there in Ghana. He came back and at the, I believe it was the Dexter Baptist Church, his church there in Atlanta. And he did a speech called The Birth of a Nation. And we should go and look that speech and study it. If you read it without knowing you're reading Dr. King's speech, you would think you was listening to a Pan-Africanist. Now, I'm not trying to redirect Dr. King. Well, I guess we are. His history is redirecting him. And really not redirecting him, but redirecting the lie, the false image that they have given us to keep us in dreamland. He was not a dreamer. So to answer your question, I think if the Honorable Elijah had an effect, I'm sure he did. But it's hard to gauge because he was already on that path when they finally came together and met.
Now, Brother Brian, you mentioned that speech, The Birth of a Nation. Was Dr. King's evolutionary change reflected in any of his sermons before he was taken from us?
I think so. I think so because, again, even the night that he died and he did that famous I've been to the mountaintop speech. And, you know, the plan was to really take the Poor People's Campaign to Washington. Really, see, and now we're dealing in economic freedom, economic development, going back to the reality that Black people have been shafted when it came to economics. Even white liberal organizations that supported Black organizations behind the scenes, like in the Jewish community, they don't care. You can talk integration, you can talk this, but don't get involved with pushing your people into economic freedom and economic justice. Otherwise, we will take you out.
Brother Brian, as always, thank you so much for your insight on the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy, and yes, for helping us to see him in his full picture and not just the narrative that has been with us for many, many years. We look forward to speaking with you again next week.
Thank you, Sister Rosalind. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Let's pause for announcements from our sponsors. Afterward, Dr. Akili Muhammad joins us to speak on keeping our immune system strong during another era in the pandemic. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. Cash App NNV News.
AsiaticMinds.com. Online education, helping our children to discover their God-given skills, gifts, talents, and passion that will allow them to see their greatness, as well as the greatness of our people. And upon discovering that greatness, infusing them with the desire to use it for the betterment of themselves, their families, our people, and the world. 2022 through 23 enrollment waiting list open now. Visit AsiaticMinds.com.
Worldwide, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Download the Final Call Radio app and take us everywhere. On your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also log on to finalcall.com and click the Listen Live button or finalcallradio.com. Final Call Radio, the official voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam.
Thank you for tuning in to NNV News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comments section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Network View. This is Clifton Muhammad with NNVnews.com.
In this first month of the year 2022, we are seeing new variants of the COVID-19 virus cause mass distress. The media promotes many different vaccines and boosters, while more and more people are looking for an alternate treatment. Joining us to discuss this is Dr. Akili Muhammad. Greetings, sir.
Greetings, ma'am. How are you?
I am well. Thank you, sir. Dr. Akili, you always let us know that building our immune system is the best way to fight off this virus. Can you take a moment to reintroduce us to the best ways to build our immune system while on the move in this changing social and physical climate?
Yes, right now, in most of the United States and in many parts of the world, there's not a lot of sunshine, not a lot of warmth. So, of course, getting out and getting a good amount of hot sunshine and then a lot of outdoor activity is something that many of us are going to miss or are not even available in our regions. So we have to concentrate on the foods that would do some benefit. So when I talk about the sunshine, of course, I'm specifically talking about vitamin D. So during this time of the year, it would be good if you had whole milk, which is milk that comes directly from a cow that has vitamin D in it. Of course, there need to be some investigations. Just don't go to any farm and buy any milk. Also, salmon would be a good fish to eat if you're not a vegetarian. That is probably the best source of vitamin D from a meat perspective. And so those would be foods that I would suggest people add. You don't want to eat a lot of fish because there are a lot of toxins in them, but maybe, 3 or 4 times a month would not be a bad idea. You always want to stick with vitamin C rich food. So, of course, most of your fruits are going to have vitamin C. That's going to be highest in the berries and in the citrus fruits. And then you want to make sure that you always have the cruciferous vegetables, your broccoli, the cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, squash, things of those nature, asparagus, okra. Those all have high levels of vitamin C. So you want to make sure that you keep those foods. It's very important to consume vegetables, excuse me, to keep yourself regular, because making sure that you eliminate is also good for keeping the system boosted and keeping it fresh and able to fight off whatever tends to come towards it. Want to make sure you're drinking water and hydrating, getting enough rest, and of course, trying to decrease your stress. And most importantly, keep your positive thoughts that the things that you are doing are going to keep you healthy and that you're not going to get sick by doing these activities.
Right. Now, Dr. Akili, you mentioned some of the foods that we should eat during this time of year. Are there any foods we should stay away from?
Yes, actually, if you're trying to take care of yourself correctly, especially during pandemic, you really should get away from meat in general.
Okay.
I'm not even going to pork. None of us should be eating that. But if you're eating lamb and beef, chicken and turkey, of course, are worse meats because you're not getting any nutritional value from them. But those meats take a lot to digest. And anytime your body's taking a lot of time to digest, it's a lot more work than you're getting benefits from the food. So that has a tendency to put your body in a deficit when it comes to energy and the ability to have a good immune system. The other thing would be fried foods. Very hard on the system, because anytime you fry a food, you make it very difficult for the body to digest. When you're talking about white foods, white salt, white rice, white sugar, white bread, white flour, all of these things should be eliminated from your diet, because those are all enemies to the body. And so every time you eat some food that has some white substance in it, the ones I just finished mentioning, your body and your immune system has to attack that. So imagine every time you eat food, your body has to attack that, and you're trying to keep yourself healthy from something that's trying to attack you from your respiratory system. A lot of work you put on the body. So stay away from white foods, and you really should stay away from all things that we consider the slave diet or soul food.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things are foods that we wound up eating because we had no choices. We have better choices in 2022, so we should make them. And I forgot to mention in the last segment, make sure you're eating navy beans. That is the best bean, and it is the one that will, boost your system the most, the navy bean. So buy those and learn how to prepare those correctly.
Yes, sir. Since mainstream media is pushing the vaccine, can we trust our local doctors if we catch COVID-19?
Well, I mean, that is a excellent question. And I think it's very difficult to ascertain the answer to that question in the midst of you being sick. So I would suggest to everybody, if you live in a part of the country where you don't know any doctors and you haven't done your diligence to try to find somebody that's open to your perspective, you should start doing that. Don't wait till you're sick to start trying to find somebody. We're living in a very dangerous time in that a lot of doctors, even prior to this pandemic, were literally kicking people out of their practices because they don't agree with their philosophy. And that is absolutely against what's supposed to be the standard of practice in medicine. The physician is supposed to enter the room and serve you as the patient. But we're living in a time where people are so arrogant, people are so insecure, that the only thing they know to do is to dictate. And so you don't want to be in a situation where your life is on the line and you wind up putting your life into somebody's hands like that. So, excuse me. So do your diligence. Take the time to reach out to the area that you live in, the region that you live in, and take some time and research people, ask questions, and then go to these people that potentially could be the right ones and ask questions, very serious questions. You should investigate them and go through a screening process just like you would do anything else. Don't act as if just because a person is a doctor, they're best for you. There are many doctors that are losing their minds because they have no idea how to handle the pressure of this pandemic that we're going through. So all they know to do is just lean on what mainstream medicine is telling them to do. But obviously we can see that 5 or 6 or 7, 1,000 boosters later, that this system is broken and the information that they're giving us is not valid to keep you healthy and alive for long periods of time.
Now, you did mention something very important, which is to research the doctors that are in our area that we can go to before we are sick. Do you feel like there are enough doctors who provide alternative treatments for us to go to?
Yes, I absolutely think there are. In every place that I've ever lived, California, Nashville, I was in school, Houston for many years, and now in Macon, there are doctors out here that do alternative things. But the problem is that most people don't take the time to research these people while you're healthy. You wait until you're sick, or you wait until you're in a situation where you're making decisions out of fear and fluster, and you're usually going to make a bad decision in that type of situation. Or you're not going to take the time to really investigate. You're just going to find the first answer that comes to you and roll with it. And as many people are finding during this pandemic, that's a mistake many times, to roll with whatever is the first answer that comes to you, because you're making a decision in haste. And if we're talking about a medical problem, the majority of people are making a decision in fear. Haste and fear will usually have you wind up in the wrong situation. So yes, take your time and do it while you're healthy. It's worth your time. You should make the sacrifice. You know, if you watch sports or you go shopping or you play this or you have this type of hangout with your friends, well, you make up your mind whether that's more important than finding somebody that could potentially save your life in a situation like we're living in now.
Yes, sir. Now, if someone catches COVID-19 now, what are some treatments they can take from home?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily call anything that I say a treatment. That's a dangerous word, right? Because in this country, you use the word treatment, and that is actually a medical thing.
Okay.
Whereas if we talk about natural remedies, or we talk about some herbal remedies, or just some family passed down remedies, you know, I would keep on that. On that note, I would say the first thing that you want to do is get rid of the idea that the mainstream medical community tries to make us think. Like a runny nose is a bad thing.
Right.
Coughing is a bad thing. Fever is a bad thing. Chills, muscle aches, all of these are natural responses of the immune system when it's attacking something. So if you get a fever, you shouldn't go take something to decrease your fever. You're stopping the God-given process that the body does to kill the problem. When your nose starts running, you are literally cleansing, but yet you're going to take something to stop your nose from running.
Right.
When you're coughing, you're pulling up mucus. The body has killed something, it collected it with mucus, and now your body's trying to expel the mucus, and you want to take something to stop the coughing. So the first thing is to understand that the processes that the body does are normal. And what we should do is promote that from happening. The faster you promote it to happen, the faster your body gets over the processes. The more you suppress it, the longer the symptoms last. And so you want to stay drinking water. You want to stay hydrated. If you're sick, I would suggest doing things like organic orange juice, doing things like ginger, turmeric, and honey tea, which is on my Instagram account, the Ultimate Wellness Group on IG. The recipe is on that channel. And then you want to not eat a lot of foods. When your body is trying to fight something, it needs much rest. It needs the time to be able to go and fight. So don't feed yourself a lot of food. Eat small amounts of food, soups, and maybe fruit. Keep it light and let your body rest. You should get some rest. Most importantly, if you think you're infected, try to stay away from people. Stay out of public, because that's the way we pass it. When you're feverish, when you have body aches, those are all signs that you have the ability to pass it to somebody else. When your nose starts running, when you get congested, when you start coughing, usually that's the part of it where you're cleansing and you're not really infective. And so it takes time to understand these things, but when you understand what's going on with your body, you start working on making sure that you benefit yourself to get over it and then recover to get yourself back to normal as fast as possible. Did I answer the question?
You did. Yes, sir. But one thing I did want to mention or make note of is you're right. I think we've lost some of the knowledge of how the body works and its processes. So to avoid the inconvenience of its natural processes, we've developed methods and I guess treatments to combat that process. So
Yes.
I'm noticing that that's what we're seeing these days. And part of the reason why it's been so hard to contain at least one of these variants of the
Yes.
virus.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you again, Dr. Akili, for speaking to us and offering your insightful information as usual. We look forward to speaking with you again next week.
Thank you for having me, and I look forward to it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today and tuning into National Network View News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, NNV News. This is Rosalind Parks with National Network View News. Good night.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. go to nnvnews.com/donate.